This video is part 2 of a 2-part series that talks about the number one factor to invest successfully in real estate syndications. And that factor is how to pick a great sponsor. Part 1 talked about the characteristics of a great sponsorship team. In this video, I'm going to talk about the activities that a great team does to make sure they support you, the limited partner. Because great teams do things that poor teams do not. So first off, when meeting a sponsor, you're probably going to go through an introductory process to get to know them. This process will tell you a lot about that sponsor that can be both good and bad, so it's good to pay attention. The ideal response to a new inquiry is to set up a call with you to get to know more about you and your goals, your tolerance for risk, and your suitability for investing in private placements like a real estate syndication. Doing this ensures that investing in a real estate syndication truly is what you want to do for your financial goals. If they skip this step, I'd consider it a big red flag because that means they're not really interested in you per se, and they're just more interested in getting your money into their syndication. So be very careful with this. Now, the team should also be providing their track record. You should be able to see the results of their past deals that have gone full cycle. The term full cycle simply means that the team found a property, they evaluated it, they went ahead and raised money for it, they made an investment, they purchased it, they managed it, and then they sold it for a profit and paid that out to investors. That's a full cycle. You want to invest with a team that's done at least a few full cycle deals so that they have the experience that you know they can do a good job. To be a good sponsor, you have to have experience. And the only way you can get experience is by doing more full cycle deals. So it's so important for you to get that information to understand how they did in those deals that they did recently. The most common return metrics you're going to see are equity multiple, cash on cash return, IRR. I'm not going to go into the definitions of these. I created a video which you can check out right here that does that. One word of caution when looking at the returns on various full cycle deals that they might have done. Don't just think that, one that got a really high, for example, equity multiple or IRR was a lot better than another one, because there are many factors that are taken into account when creating an investment. For example, the amount of risk that was taken on is a big factor. If it's a lower risk deal, perhaps that's really what investors wanted, and it had a lower return because of it. So it's not a good or bad thing. It's just a different type of investment that people invested in. So just keep that in mind, that every property and every investment has its own business case and its own plan. Something else that's important to look at, and it's often overlooked, is looking at a sponsor's website and their marketing materials. Do they look professional and well put together? Are there a bunch of misspellings and grammatical errors? It's not uncommon that very good sponsors aren't going to be good at the look and feel of their brand, but it says something when you see mistakes in their materials, because it makes you wonder, well, if they can't get that right, then what else could be going on? Now, it's not uncommon that very good sponsors are not necessarily very good at their branding or their marketing materials and things like that, but the website and the materials they put out should have a basic level of professionalism. Something else that great sponsors do is that they underwrite deals conservatively. So underwriting is just a fancy name for analyzing. So what does conservative underwriting actually mean? Well, there's a lot of assumptions that are made when somebody is analyzing a potential property for an investment. And those assumptions may be more or less aggressive based on that particular sponsor. How do they approach the unknowns and the risks in those investments? That'll tell you a lot about how they approach their investments in general. You want to invest with somebody that underpromises and over-delivers. I would look for clues that they made assumptions that are more on the conservative side. What are some examples? Well, one example is rent growth. Say they're going to hold the property for 6 years as part of their plan, and every year they're assuming a 2% increase in rents or a 10% increase in rents. That's a 5 times magnitude difference that could have a big impact on the analysis they do. In my opinion, for example, putting anything more than 2% is not a good idea. Another thing you can look at is how quickly they're going to be renovating all the units. So for example, if part of the plan is to renovate, say, half of all the units in the property, and they plan on doing that, say, over 2 years, Are they assuming that the income from the increased rents is going to happen in year one? Because that's a red flag, because it's not going to be done in year one. It's going to be done by the end of year two. So knowing some of those details and looking at their numbers and understanding how they're approaching their deals is really smart. Another one is lending. What kind of financing are they obtaining? Are they getting a bridge loan, which is a variable rate loan typically? That may or may not be an issue, but having a few years of a variable rate loan introduces some risks, right? So these are the kinds of things that I'm talking about. Now, this topic is so important, and there's probably things that you're not going to know that well. So I'm going to create a separate video that looks at conservative underwriting and what that really means, so you're able to look at deals and make an informed decision as you look at them. It's also good to ask about how they do their due diligence. During the purchase of a commercial real estate property, there's a period where the prospective buyers can inspect the property. Ask the sponsor, what do they do for their due diligence inspections? Do they inspect every single unit? Because if they don't, that's probably something to be concerned about, because you never know what they could find. Next, I would ask who typically is the asset manager for their properties. Asset managers are the people that keep their eye on the property and make sure that it's meeting its business plan and running smoothly. They also keep the property manager accountable to the goals that were set. Is it a professional asset manager who's going to be doing it full time? What's their experience? How many properties have they managed before? I wouldn't want somebody that has a full-time job doing something completely different as the asset manager for the investment I'm putting money into. That to me is a recipe for trouble, because they're not going to have the time to dedicate to really truly asset manage this investment and also visit the property and do the things that asset managers typically do. I would also ask about investor reporting. If it's one thing I've heard from passive investors over time that really bothers them, it's a lack of communication. And unfortunately, there are many very good sponsors who aren't necessarily very good communicators. But a strong professional sponsor should have good communication and good reporting. That means that they would clearly let you know how the property is doing versus plan at least every quarter. I really recommend that you ask them, how do you do your reporting? Can you show me some examples of your reports that you sent out? That'll really help you get an idea as to the kinds of communication they put out to investors. And the fact of the matter is, if passive investors do not receive updates from the sponsors, they're going to assume the worst. I personally know sponsors that have done really good jobs on their investments, but because they didn't communicate, the limited partners never wanted to invest with them again. Another thing to ask the sponsor is when K1s are typically issued to passive investors. If you don't know what that is, the IRS form K1 keeps track of the income and the depreciation that's passed from the property's LLC to the individual investors, like you. So including this in your personal tax return is important, because this is how you get the tax benefits of investing in real estate. So I'm going to tell you right now, more than likely, you're going to have to file an extension so that you can file your taxes from April 15th, moving it to October 15th or so, just because it takes some time to get those K1 forms out to investors. It's not a big deal. It's very easy to do, but I would just get that in your mind right now mentally, just so that you're not surprised when the time comes that you still don't have your K1 form and you're getting close to the April 15th date. Hey, real quick, are you enjoying this video? If so, please tap the like button so YouTube knows that people are finding value in this content, and this video will be shown to more immigrants. Now back to the video. And finally, I would ask for references. At least a few limited partners that you can talk to get their insights as to what it's like to invest with that sponsor. Yes, these limited partners might be their biggest fans, but still, you can learn a lot about the sponsor through these conversations. So there's a lot more detail behind this that you could go into, but I wanted to give you just a taste of the kinds of things that you need to do to make sure you're looking at sponsors correctly. As I mentioned in part 1 of this series, my personal goal is to make sure that you as an investor are protected and you make the best decision you can with your money. Finding a good sponsor is the most important step when investing in real estate syndications. And if you pick a good sponsor to work with, more than likely they're going to have good deals that you can look at. So do you have any questions about this topic that I haven't covered? If so, feel free to put them down in the comments and I'll do my best to answer them. Thank you for watching the Immigrant Wealth channel.